the majority of the population turned into zombies, and at least the current form of civilization annihilated. Moreover, there are free-to-play video games that suggest a chance to experience such a post-apocalyptic escape without having to purchase a game, which might by itself appear different from how players normally access such products under neoliberal capitalism, especially when the in-app purchases can seem only optional. Through a close reading of three popular free-to-play mobile games, Last Day on Earth Survival, Dawn of Zombie Survival, and Doomsday Last Survivals as major examples of this game genre. I try to see players of which socioeconomic class can perform best as the human survivors in such simulational game worlds and to discuss the political significance of the zombies in them. I also try to see if the various elements of the games create worlds which are different at their core, or if they are just extensions of the physical world and its realities, mirroring its dominant ideologies in their aesthetics, gameplay, narrative, and marketing. I must explain here that the reason why I study three games together from three different companies is that I intend to discuss similar patterns in the genre, not just a single game or a specific producer, while at the same time trying to show the genre's potential for creativity and adopting a different approach in game design and marketing. Imagine you are a woman who struggles with sexism and misogyny every day, and you decide to seek refuge, even for an hour, in a zombie apocalypse in which the world, as you know it, along with its dysfunctionalities, has ended, providing a chance to experience or even build something different. And just then you stumble upon IGG's Doomsday Last Survivors. These are only some of the screenshots I have taken from the videos that advertise the game. In the first screenshot, it is later shown that he is actually trying to pull her out of the car and save her. And in the second, those are zombie hands trying to grab her. I do not think these ones need an explanation with their situations and their clothes in a zombie apocalypse. And these are also there are also these female characters dressed in something like what you see on the right, asking for help, and a man is probably going to save her, like you see on the left. And I think these ones are also clear enough. However, Doomsday's ads often feature false information about the game. Therefore, the scenes in the ads do not necessarily exist in the game. This is not the first time that I've seen ads for an IGG game do this. The first time I noticed it was with Lords Mobile, which we do not have the time to discuss here. So the gameplay you see in these screenshots is not what you see in the game. It is clear that game ads need more scrutiny, and misleading ads must have more financial and legal consequences for the producers. Even though some of the ads are fake, it does not mean that the game itself is innocent, especially when it comes to its female characters. While nudity in relevant game scenes with appropriate age restrictions can be aesthetically pleasing, realistic, and even an effective way actually to push traditional boundaries in some societies, it can also be used inappropriately or even implausibly, which might even shatter the suspension of disbelief. For instance, female heroes in Doomsday are not dressed logically for a zombie apocalypse. Their bodies also have features associated with stereotypical male fantasies. The two heroes that you see here, for example, are the first ones advertised in the game, and it is obvious that it is not just the fake ads that objectify and commodify the female body. There's even criticism from players, with thousands of others supporting them in the in-game comments section for each hero, As you can see here, one player says the character designers are perverts. Another one says if they are going to dress female heroes like this, they should put male heroes in thongs. And you can read the rest yourself. Again, um, here you can see another female character along with a comment from a player, and you can compare her clothes to those of two male characters. There are controversial scenes involving female characters in the game. For example, in one of the initial missions in the game, the player is supposed to save a female hero, and what resembles a BDSM session, as you can see here, cannot really be justified simply with the fact that she is infected and might turn into a zombie, especially considering her reactions and her clothes. Every time you get a dose of a certain drug, you can choose where to inject it in one of the body parts you see in the second screenshot. And as you inject more doses, she loses some of her clothes. Even female zombies show more skin in Doomsday than the male ones, as you can see here. But what about escaping from issues other than sexism? Well, the cultural critique in Last Day on Earth, such as describing cigarettes as what used to be the leading cause of death before the apocalypse, or describing gold watches as status symbols, which after the apocalypse are only dismantled into spare parts, might seem like a promise of a whole different world at first. It actually does something different in the end. Interestingly, the game also allows players to cheat the system through a technique called walling, which has been around for years, apparently. The technique lets the players hide behind walls and kill strong enemies by timing their attacks between the enemy's heavy blows and then retreating behind the wall while the enemy does not move around the wall to reach them. This is really advantageous for the players, even though the enemies are zombies. It is not really plausible. So the fact that it has not been disabled with an update might mean there's a political aspect to it, like a social critique of some kind, by simply implying that in such a system, if you are not wealthy enough to buy everything you need from the beginning, you need to find bugs or loopholes and cheat the system in order to grow. Well, it can be an interesting topic for further discussion. Nevertheless, in order to make progress in the main story, the player needs to build a motorcycle, either by finding the pieces or buying certain packs in the game. If the players choose to follow the free-to-play path, they get one wheel by killing the first NPC survivor, which is in line with the antagonistic atmosphere the game builds up against other survivors through the behavior of the so-called AI survivors that behave and look like human survivors, which interestingly are often hostile, and through content such as a loading screen tip that it describes other survivors as almost always aggressive, possibly training the player for player versus player or PvP multiplayer mode. And they get the second wheel as a possible reward for clearing very dangerous places on the map. However, it is in fact a rigged wheel chase. There are streamers online complaining about how many times they have wasted important resources, such as the YouTube channel called Gameplay 365, only to find that the loot boxes does not contain the wheel, which has also been my own personal experience while playing the game, leaving me feeling actually betrayed by the system, not much different from the physical world. But what if they buy the packs actually? Even then, it is not guaranteed if it is a cheap small pack only for the bike, because the pack lists the wheel as merely a possible reward, not a guaranteed one. So they should buy a whole premium package to access the wheel, or just keep clearing places, hoping that it can appear one day. Furthermore, players seem to prefer single player to multiplayer in Last Day on Earth, probably because that is where the gear comparison hits them hard. The game has a co-op and a PvP multiplayer mode, and as the streamer Happy Cyric has also noted, multiplayer is not that popular, and he also warns that you can lose a lot of gear in PvP, which is clearly discouraging. Uh, Kaylin Smith has shown in her article titled "Getting Cozy with the Zombie Apocalypse: The Safe Room as Capitalist Break Room in Left 4 Dead and Back 4 Blood," that the safe rooms in Left 4 Dead and Back 4 Blood mirror the work and leisure cycle in capitalist logic, providing them either as a break or a reward. The same thing can be said about the shelters in Doomsday, Dawn of Zombies, and Last Day on Earth. In fact, as I have said before in another article that I've been working on, under neoliberalism, people's homes can be reduced to a place whose main purpose is to merely prepare them for tomorrow's work. And Last Day on Earth describes the in-game home as a cozy and safe place for spending an evening by the fire and restoring some health. And in the game, players mostly craft tools at home, rebuild it, or replenish their bags. In Last Day on Earth and Dawn of Zombies, you might sacrifice too many precious items for an enemy that is not really worth it. Then you have to sit back and watch ads, but this seems like a bigger problem in Last Day on Earth. And it is not a question of whether the producers deserve the income. That's a whole other discussion. Here, I mostly focus on the experience of non-paying players. While discussing Resident Evil 5 in their article titled Ludic Zombies, an examination of zombiism in games, Becca and Arset argued that when defeating boss enemies gives the player high-level rewards, the zombies are commodified by the game. This point is also valid for all these three games here. While discussing Plants vs. Zombies, Becca and Arset pointed out that the zombies are not given individual identities, but rather divided into various classes, which is also what happens in all three games again. Becca and Arset also pointed out that sometimes zombies are featured in games simply as perfect enemies, which is also the case in Doomsday. The zombie virus as a threat becomes more and more irrelevant as the game goes on, and the zombies become more mere monsters, not much different from the monsters in a previous IGG game you might have played, like Lords Mobile, which is not even a zombie game. The huge number of survivors actually also further fades the concept of a zombie apocalypse. Peter Dendel, in his article, The Zombies as a Barometer of Cultural Anxiety, pointed out that traditional slow zombies represented a lack of individuality, while fast zombies were insatiable and represented a lack of control, and that zombies today represent the fear of raw power. Interestingly, all three games feature both slow and fast zombies, and the zombie bosses most efficiently embody that fear of raw power Dendel talked about. Moreover, when giant zombies called exploders die in Last Day on Earth, they explode and spawn creatures called parasites that can cause serious damage if they come in contact with the player. And there's also another zombie boss called the Witch, which is itself a very strong zombie that can summon and control the undead. Dawn of Zombies helps the players stockpile guns and resources with a relatively rewarding system in the beginning of for the first days of gameplay or so, and with its ally system. Yeah, there's a system in the game called the allies system where you can choose companions who fight alongside the player very efficiently, saving the player lots of resources and item durability. Uh, but I'm talking about durability here because in Last Day on Earth and Dawn of Zombies, items such as weapons and clothes or armor lose durability as they are used in fights. Last Day on Earth also has a dog companion, but the player cannot take the dog out of the shelter with actually with them unless it is a top ranked dog with the true friend trait, which is really rare in the game. But the ally system in Dawn of Zombies is available early in the game, and the player is basically never alone. And unlike Doomsday, the shelter is not constantly haunted by other players. So, can the games really provide an escape? Well, I should begin the final part of this presentation with the fact that it is not just the zombies that are commodified, but also the players. Players are commodified when they perform in-game actions such as watching ads and when they allow the games access their when they allow the games access to their data. The concept of player commodity has actually been thoroughly discussed in David Nieborg's article, Free to Play Games and App Advertising, The Rise of the Player Commodity. He says players, along with their data and their in-app actions, constitute the player commodity. Another important aspect of the games is that by creating post-apocalyptic worlds, which are in many ways similar to the physical world in terms of their core dominant economic principles, ideologies, and even aesthetics, the games repeatedly discourage the non-paying players and embrace paying players. In all three games, the time spent gathering and crafting can turn the game into a hopeless chore. Having less and less playtime can serve as an indirect kick-out for those who do not buy packs, even in the case of Last Day on Earth and Dawn of Zombies. Even, in these games, the watching ads for rewards approach often actually feels useless. In fact, in all three games, non-paying players are practically undead. They're like zombies because they just roam the map with no clear purpose after a while. The strongest players in all three games are obviously the ones who spend a lot of money. Moreover, in Doomsday, it is only practical for paying players to be clan leaders or even be a high-ranking officer in the clan, so it is obviously pay to win. Players might ask, why should I even watch an ad in a zombie apocalypse? Even, Dawn of Zombies, when it calls the ads pre-war videos, does not really fix anything because, the suspension of disbelief is, I think, shattered at that moment when you see modern ads in a zombie apocalypse. We are supposed to see the destruction of the currently dominant systems, but we enter a shopping mall with currency signs all over the place and slot machines and roulettes. Another issue is that we already had a more honest approach in advertising before such mobile games. That is, demos. They were clear about everything. You can use certain features and play the story to a certain point for free, but then if you're interested, you need to buy the whole product. By contrast, these so-called free-to-play games often give you the illusion that you can make progress if you work harder or watch more ads in the game. Whether you think it is a fair trade or not is a whole other discussion. While of course making it clear, the games mostly, sometimes make it clear little by little as you play on what features are only purchasable with money. They are demos at best, but at least in demos, we could keep our suspension of disbelief. But here, it is like a shopping mall experience. Even if you are a paying player, you are never satisfied. You are never done buying, and there's always someone else with more money buying more than you, and there's always more stuff to buy, and at some point you might find yourself only waiting for the next update or event simply to buy more and beat others, not by the skill you acquired in the game world, but mostly by the money you have spent. If you are attracted to these, post-apocalypses to experience a so-called utopia in which the currently dominant ideologies have broken free of the arguably few restrictions they face and their opposition has perished, you are in luck. You can buy an in-game legion to attack another player's territory. You need money to survive even in the post-apocalyptic game world. But if you need a game world in order to escape from the psychological strain of poverty, war, inequality, sexism, racism, and a cutthroat capitalism and neoliberal policies, the disillusionment you might experience after installing the games can be devastating because even your leisure becomes labor, which is worth further scrutiny. Sometimes we all need an escape which helps our mental health and stress management. Sometimes we try to forget our surroundings for a short time and come back to them with a fresh perspective, which is one of the reasons why we watch TV, read novels, or play games. In the case of this genre, however, what you experience is an escape which is not real, but can actually make you stop attempting an escape and reach a point where it seems that, as Jameson said, Frederick Jameson is in his Political Unconscious, it's easier to imagine the end of the world than it is the end of capitalism. Let me save you some time. The game is rigged. Thank you for your time.